Hello friends, welcome back to the next session on operations planning, scheduling and control. Now let's begin with our learning. In this particular session, we'll be understanding and dealing with the concepts of managing operational variability, the learning objectives. At the end of this particular session, the learners will be able to understand what do we mean by managing the operational variability, how the managerial variability process is being undertaken, and what are the various factors that affect the operational variability in the organization and how to manage it. Now let's understand with the meaning or the beginning of the managing operational variability. With respect to the managing operational variability, first a student or a learner needs to understand what do we mean by an operations activity. Operations activity is an activity which has been undertaken in an organization to conduct several types of operations. That is a series of activities. Now, when this particular series of activity are being undertaken, they are being assigned a specified time period. When the specified time period is been allocated to them, they may be conducted over a period of time. That is an activity for a minute, for 2 minutes, for 5 minutes, for 10 minutes, or for around an hour. In this case, what happens? There may be certain type of point of time wherein there may be variations in the timing factor. That is, the input of raw material may take a certain point of time, the output or productivity, the polishing or finishing of a certain product, the ideal time, the downtime of a certain machinery, and so on. So in this particular case, there may be either increase in the product feasibility time or delivery time, or it may be decrease a certain point of time. In this case, one has to manage about what are the various operational activities that have been undertaken, how the time may vary as per the time that has been decided or that has been set, and how to overcome those resources. The business process that we are undertaking, it may differ from product to product, commodity to commodity, service to service, and so on. And hence, when we are going for a standardization as a perspective, it is to be need or it is to be seen that how the business techniques are being applied and the efficiency or the productivity of the organization is being increased. This particular standardization process is being implemented in the organization to produce the qualitative as well as quantitative products and delivering the goods and services to the customer within the specified time period. The deadline that needs to be achieved or needs to be obtained by the organization is the concern within which parameter the production or operations activity needs to be completed. And hence, for those particular concern, the managing of operation time is essentially important. And hence, for generating more difficulty that has been solved at an early stage, the managing operational variability is essentially required. Now let's understand what are the three pitfalls that one needs to avoid. The first pitfall that one needs to avoid is making massive standard procedures. The standard procedures that have been implemented in the organization may at times create a certain amount of confusion. That is, one activity may collide with another. And hence, for those particular concern, it is highly recommended that those particular activities which are not of important nature should strictly be avoided, and accordingly, the standard procedures should be nullified. With a fresh business or forms of organization, it is a common practice that when there is a no experience or no sequence of activities are being undertaken, then there are high chances of collusion. And hence, for those particular concern, the managing operational variability is a different perspective. Next, second pitfall is constructing a massive processes. Simultaneously, a business organization may conduct several types of process, that is either one process, two process, three process, or n number of processes. Now, when those several number of processes are being undertaken, the project is into a running phase and various technicalities or teams are being involved into that particular project. Now, when there are several participants, accordingly, the variations may also differ. A product or a particular target may be achieved or a target may not be achieved. And hence, when those particular targets are not met, then accordingly, there is a variability in the operational structures or strategies. Simultaneously, when there are massive of several number of processes that are going on at a certain stage, each and every product has to maintain its respective documentation, and hence the documentation or the process work of the paperwork is also increased at a several stage or point of time. So for this particular concern, constructing the massive processes should be avoided, and it should be seen that in order to obtain or in order to maintain the operational variability, one needs to have a simplified process in an assembly line. The last pitfall, that is the third pitfall, is developing a unique process variations. Now, one activity may be always connected to some another. An assembly line passing from product A to product B to product C, those particular activities may be correlated. And for those particular concern, one has to take into account about how the variations in the process can be undertaken. This particular approach focuses on the concept that the activities that are being organized should be there in a particular sequence, and those should be in a segregated way. When those particular activities are segregated, the massive collision of those particular activities can be avoided, and accordingly, it can be able to sprawl the activity in an effective manner. The organization's culture, the organization's management thinking or the thought process, the strategic decision making that has been undertaken at the national or at the global or at the company level also needs to be implemented in a very effective way, and accordingly, the operational variability should be tried to control in the long run. Now let's understand what are the various 7 ways for managing the controlling the operational variability. Number 1, creating a global standard process as a foundation for all variations. At this stage, we should be able to try to set up or build a standard process which can act as a foundation for your company, that is our organization, as well as for the global organization, wherein it is needed or it is been required so as to see that whatever may be the changes in the terms and conditions or the environment, the standard procedure that we have set will be acceptable to all the environments. Establishing the local variations wherever necessary. So wherever there is a certain necessity for the implementation of variations, at that particular stages, the variations must be implemented, and accordingly, the global standard needs to be applied. So changes in the policy, changes in the factors of production, or changes in the uh, time cycle of a particular product needs to be implemented in a very effective way. Ensure ensuring all processes variations are visible. So in order to see that all the processes that have been created are visible to each and every participants of the supply chain or the assembly chain or the assembly line is essentially important. And hence, whatever variations or changes that have been required should be implemented in a very effective way, and it has to be seen that those processes are visible and acceptable to all the participants, making sure that teams have easy access to the relevant variations. If in case at a certain stages or point of time, certain variations are needed to be implemented, then the team must be aware of those particular variations, and accordingly, it should be acceptable and visible to everyone. So, accessibility of the variations is essentially required. Notifying the owners of process variations or changes to the standard processes. So here in this case, if there is a certain downfall in a system that has been implemented and accordingly the variation needs to be implemented, then the communication to all the participants of the supply chain or the assembly line needs to be communicated immediately, and accordingly notification to all the owners of the processes, that is whosoever is the person or the machine that has been responsible for such activity, should be provided with that particular information about the changes in variations. Implementing the global reporting. Simultaneously, if the process is being implemented at the local level or it has been variation or the variations have been incorporated at the local level, the same communication should be given or should be provided at the global level so as to have a proper communication and process formation at all the levels of the organization. And lastly, gathering and analyzing the cost and time data. So a proper comparison and analysis is needed to be required and to be made so as to see that whatever data that we have collected or that we have gathered is as per the time standards or as per the standard that we have set, and whatever targets that we were looking for, they have been achieved or met within the specified time period or not. And hence, for the comparison as a perspective, the operational management variability is essentially important. Now let's understand the concept of heavy lifting and operations variability. So heavy lifting and operations variability is a certain concept which takes into account the feasibility of the organization to manage the process with the aids of strong process variant management technology. So with the help of management technology that has been implemented, the various processes can be implemented and certain changes in those particular processes can be organized in an automatic routing. Now, automatic routing is a term or a concern wherein the process or systems or activities are being conducted with an automated software, wherein the software gives a certain guidelines or certain options or directions based on which the activities or series of activities are being conducted. To provide a centralized hub for an activity, the software is been designed and it provides certain directions, and accordingly the variations with respect to the production, manufacturing, capacity orientation can be implemented, and accordingly the variations in the products can be controlled. In order to move or assess the cost and time associated with the processes, a management platform with a tracking and comparison of reporting capability is essentially required. So whenever there is a system of management platform into existence, one has to see that the cost and time that has been associated while implementing the variations is needed to be minimized, so as to see that whatever variations have been implemented, it does not create a waste of a product that has been into existence, and accordingly all the operational activities have been completed in a flexible way. The operations variability system provides your senior decision makers and clear structure of how we can improve and reduce the waste. So improvement as a Kaizen or a Kanban or a certain JIT or a certain perspectives of the operational strategy can be implemented in a very effective way, and accordingly the operational variability can be occupied. So heavy lifting of goods and services with respect to changes in the operational activities or implementation of a new variation can be easily adopted, and so as to see we have to also manage that the waste also is being reduced at the minimal level. Now, what do we mean by operational excellence in terms of operations variability? Operational excellence is a combination of all the organization's people, process, and systems, and which can lead to an operational excellence. So, when all the components of the strategy with respect to the people, the process, and the systems comes together, then only we can say that the operations excellence is into existence. Now, in order to prepare the flexibility in one or more challenging issues, better responsiveness of cost-cutting issues and revenue generation options should be provided by the organization. Now, in terms of the cost-cutting issues, the major composition or the factor is the availability of raw material, wherein if there is a certain change in the raw material, then how those particular changes can be implemented, what are the various variations that can be implemented, and how additional revenue can be generated or created to the organization. The operational plan that a company is planning for or they are preparing, it should be, however, be in a simpler format, wherein if there are certain problems or issues that have been associated, those particular problems or issues can be addressed very immediately, and certain variations that have been required can be incorporated at an early stage. And hence, flexibility in the operational plan or the operational excellence, that is, the people, process, and systems, is essentially required. Now, there are certain types of issues which requires a typical or adequate information or focus that needs to be given. So, certain types of issues which require this specific attention, those must be addressed in a specific framework, and accordingly, operational excellence needs to be achieved as and when it is required. Now, let's understand the concept of flexibility. So, in terms of flexibility, the variable quantity levels of incoming material always needs to be monitored in the organization. The operational variability focuses on the concept of how the variations in the quality and competency of the product can be maintained and how those particular incoming material can be controlled. The flexibility in meeting the market demand for varying quality level of goods. So whatever quality of goods are available with us, those particular goods should be according to the meeting of the demand into the market, and whatever demand that has been created, it should match according to the supply that has been provided. Flexibility in competing against a new product that has been launched by the rivals. So if there is a competitor's new product coming into the market, then accordingly various measures or steps needs to be undertaken so as to see that how the new product is being launched, and accordingly there is no competition or rivalry between the competitors. Ability to adjust delivery and development timetables. For an operational scheduling activity, various timetables have been prepared, and all the activities with respect to sequencing are being undertaken on the basis of sequence that has been set. So, for those particular concerns, adjustment of delivery and proper maintenance of timetable is essentially required. Ability to accommodate the demand quantities of changing level along with the flexibility. So a demand quantities that is been there into the market, it should be able to accommodate the increase or decrease in the demand. With respect to the flexibility, the demand at certain points or places may increase, or at certain stages it may decrease. And hence, for those particular concern, there should be a proper system or mechanism into existence which looks for a certain consideration about maintenance of quality and quantity of demand, and how the flexibility as to increase and decrease can be adjusted. The ability to adjust the product mix with an ease. the product mix with respect to the various components or factors of production. That is, the availability of land, labor, capital, enterprise, and resources, the type of product, quality of product, the size, color, shape, design of the product, and so on. So, certain product attributes with respect to the manufacturing also needs to be eased at a minimum level, and accordingly, the qualitative product should be delivered to the consumer. This particular delivery should always be taken in the specified time frame, and it should be matched according to the demand and supply factors. And lastly, the ability to adapt the changes in the resource mix. So whatever resources that have been used in the production activity, all those resources should be mixed in a composite way, and accordingly, a better qualitative product should be delivered to the consumer. So here, in this case, we can understand that the influence of demand pattern and the supply chain is one of the large factor which has been looking for the operational variability as a major concern. The end customer behavior is needed to be identified, and accordingly, the changes in the operational variability is needed to be undertaken. The flexibility with respect to the micro perspective or the macro perspective is needed to be monitored in a very effective way, and micro flexibility is needed to be taken into consideration at an optimal stage. So, real-time valuation of all the goods and services, changes that are needed to be expected over a period of time, all those concerns needs to be addressed in a very effective way, and accordingly, the vehicle or the machine breakdown should be adjusted. Now, all these particular activities has significantly resulted in the cost saving and increased the revenue for the organization. And hence, we have to always see that the operational variability is always at a control stage, and whenever there is a variability into existence, it should be communicated at all level. So, the operational variability with the correct tools and techniques, if it has been implemented in a proper way, will lead to a realistic planning and a clever people who can bring in revenues, additional revenues to the organization, and the long-term profit or benefit to the organization can be created. Now let's summarize what we have learned in this particular session. In this particular session, we have learned about the concept of managing the operational variability, how and in what way the operational variability can be undertaken for the various goods and services, and what are the various activities that have been performed for operational variability as a concern. I hope you must have enjoyed the learning. Thank you for your patience listening. We'll stay connected. Thank you.